Hello and welcome to Defense India podcast. And before we start this video, please do like, share, and subscribe to the channel.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Defense India podcast where we discuss matters related to India's internal security. And joining me on the podcast is Vicky Rajappa. Vicky, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Akash.
So today, the matter that we're discussing, though the matter came to light after this web series was released, IC 814. It's basically based upon the event of the Kandahar airline hijack and how three terrorists were. Jail terrorists were released after that, and the whole controversy around it, that how the makers of the series have used Hindu names over there. Over that, there was a huge controversy. But Vicky, we this to be very honest, if we see this out of a political lens. So this, though in 2611 when Kasab was arrested and other 9 terrorists were gunned down. So the intelligence agencies figured out that they were using these Hindu symbols like the red band that we tie in our hands and all those kind of things to depict that these are Hindu extremists who are doing these attacks. But the story was very different, and same happened in Kandahar. Though I'm not so sure that at that point of time the journal masses were that much aware about what happened in that whole situation and everything. But now the controversy has erupted. But the use of Hindu names by terrorists while carrying out such attacks is not a new thing. So first of all, what is the psyche? I just want to touch upon the psyche, that why do terrorists, when they attack and all these kind of attacks happen, why do they use Hindu names rather than using some other code words or something like that?
Okay, see, Akash, first of all, Hindu names, because the thing is, attack has been staged in India. That is one, or involving Indians. That is one thing. The ISI at the end of it, which has made the suggestion, several times, like you saw in the case of IC 814 as well as 2611 attack. What happens is, the thing is, if I take, two different case studies. If I look at the IC 814. Now, when they start using these Hindu names, it's not like, ISI is that stupid that, they think that the Indian agencies are not going to figure out where this, incident emanated from, or, where this attack is being staged from. Okay. But yes, for some time, it does create that certain amount of confusion. Who are these people? What are they up to? And things like that. So, you tend to, kind of buy time. Okay. So, you spend a considerable amount of time, investigating whether they are actually, Hindus, or, they are Pakistanis or Muslims who have carried out the attack. So that was a strategy which was used out there. And in the 2611 attack also, it was actually David Headley, in his confession, he had said that he had purchased those saffron bands so that, it could pass off as a, attack by, locals or, Hindus, and the blame would not go on Pakistan. And why?
So in short, to depict that 2611 more as a kind of a gang war kind of position.
Correct. Initially that's what the news came out, saying that it was some kind of a gang war which had happened and all that. But in 2611, it was a little more dicey, Akash, because if you remember that huge narrative of this, this Hindu terror bogey was going on.
Right.
And later on, even despite the ATS catching Kasab alive and confirming that he and the rest of the 9 terrorists were in fact Pakistanis. So despite that, there were books written like RSS ki sazish, and maybe the attacks on the hotels.
And I remember this thing that very soon after the 2611 there was this book released by Manish Shankar Iyer that totally somehow put the blame on the Hindu organizations.
Yeah, that is true. It is called as this book called as RSS ki sazish. And then there was another very ridiculous theory which was also floated, saying that while the rest of the attack, like Taj, Oberoi Trident, and Girgaon Chowpatty and these places, were in fact attacked by the Pakistanis. But there was a separate right-wing Hindu group which specifically targeted Hemant Karkare, who was in charge of
Right,
investigation of
right.
the Pandora blast. So that sounded, I mean, I don't think it even qualifies a response, because it's really stupid in the middle of such a big attack, to suddenly plan and then go in, which means somebody had information before the intelligence agencies that such an attack was going to happen, and we can target Karkare. So I think at that time, this is a kind of a tactic which they keep using, to confuse the agencies, so that you spend a considerable amount of time, trying to establish their identity, who they are, what they are up to, and things like that. And that gives those terrorists some time, they buy out some time, and they are able to go about their operation, better, without any kind of hiccups.
Exactly. But Vicky, if we talk about IC-814, the whole incident, uh, the outcome was that the three, terrorists were released after negotiations, and out of them, Masood Azhar was the biggest name out of it. So, if we look at the whole incident in hindsight, because like there were I'm over here, I'm just referring the web series. There were contentions that should we let the passengers of the flight be as a collateral damage and not release these three terrorists. But I think the government, after much consideration, they thought that these three terrorists should be freed, and the people who were on that flight should be brought back to India. So in hindsight now, as we see, the incident that happened, and now the kind of attacks that we saw in the 90s, the kind of terror activities we saw in Jammu and Kashmir, the 26/11, the Pulwama attack, and all those kind of incidents. Do you think that for maybe for a short term gain, India did gamble with the long term damage?
Yeah, Akash, actually, when the terrorism in Punjab was completely wiped out, there was a very famous statement there saying that those in charge of the operation to, eliminate the terrorists had actually, decided that, these guys are going to hell and not to court. That is one big one, right? So that was one thing. And the release is one part about it, but Masood Azhar, in fact, if you remember, he had visited India as a journalist, and that's when they realized that he was trying to set up an organization in Jammu Kashmir, to carry out attacks and seek for that independence of Jammu Kashmir, all that, all those kind of things. So, and he was in jail at that time, and prior to IC-814, there were 4 attempts that the Pakistani agencies had made to have him released. So it was a little surprising to see that when that this guy is such a big asset to Pakistan, and there are attempts that have been made, like IC-814 was not the first attempt made, and to get him released. There were 4 other attempts made in the past. So what are we doing, keeping such a man there, and you're waiting for some kind of a catastrophe to happen? Had he been shot dead in an encounter, or something like that, this whole drama wouldn't have happened. The other 3 who got released with him, but yeah, they were part of it, but none as important as Masood Azhar, because not just at that time the Jaish-e-Mohammed was not formed. It was his brother Rauf Asghar who was very insistent that his brother be released, and Pervez Musharraf was very, very much in favor of that taking place. When it comes down to talking about the thing is about the operations that took place. I think once the flight was let off from Amritsar, there was a lot of debate, that whether the commandos should have stormed.
Yeah, exactly. That is also one debate, Vicky. I think. Do you? I will, come to that thing before that. Do you think that when the flight was in Amritsar, and a commando operation could have taken place, and India could have avoided this situation getting out of hand, and the intelligence agencies and the security agencies misread the whole situation?
Kind of, Akash, yes. I mean, intelligence failure, without a doubt, yes. There was solid intelligence failure. There were intercepts which are coming in from Nepal, which, many thought were a hoax and were not taken seriously. That's point number one. Okay, now, I mean, that is, hits and misses which keep happening in every intelligence operation. It happened even in the case of 9/11. That is one thing. Now, coming to the Amritsar incident, the thing is, there was a kind of a very confused approach. Now, whether you save the passengers or, you storm the flight. So, and, it was a new government headed by Vajpayee at that time. There were compulsions from the coalition, and there were protests by the relatives of those who were on the flight who wanted everyone alive. So a person who was part of this operation, I had once spoken to him, and he said there was a little bit of confusion of whether to storm the plane from behind or from the front. Now what happens is they were not exactly very aware of where exactly the hijackers had positioned themselves. So the confusion is, if you storm the plane from behind, then they could have gone on a shooting spree right from the front row until the back row. Okay, because you are going to lose people. It's like they were also armed at that time. So lot of confusion, lot of miscommunication. But once it was out of Indian soil, then we were at the mercy of whoever had carried out the hijack.
And this kind of an incident, takes us back to that incident that happened in Russia, Vicky, where these terrorists had taken hostages in a, I think it was a theater or something like that, and Russia, gassed its own people, though they did face a lot of backlash, but they didn't utilize those terrorists and all. But yes, in India, situations are very, very different, and of course, apart from military tactics, there are a lot of political tactics that are being played when such kind of incidents do take place. And that is that. But we can now moving forward. So, like we talked about Masood Azhar and how he became such a dangerous weapon for ISI, and how India has over the years tried its level best to get him banned, and of course get him arrested in the International Court of Justice, also in the UN also. But as always, nothing has come out very positive for India. But now looking at this whole incident and that the Pandora box that the whole web series has opened, do you feel that India's security apparatus has changed throughout after IC 814 and especially after 2611? What changes have we seen? Are they big changes, small changes? Are they positive changes? Are they negative changes?
Okay, see, the thing is, one is, I wouldn't know, like, how the current dispensation, would react if there was a similar kind of a situation where there was a
So,
hostage.
like the example for us is the Pulwama attacks, Vicky. To be very honest, Pulwama incident happened where we lost so many of our armed personnel, and India in retaliation did the Balakot strikes.
Yeah, that's true. See, now the thing is, what has happened is Pulwama happened, then the surgical strike happened.
Right.
Then, I'm sorry, Uri happened, and then the surgical strike happened. Pulwama happened, and then the Balakot airstrike happened.
Right.
So, in those terms, it's like, you come attack us, we will attack you. I mean, we'll pay you back in the same coin. Okay, so there is that fear in Pakistan that, you can't go around, just carrying a mindless attack and expect no, counter offensive after that. So in those terms, we have changed. But about a hostage crisis, I'm not sure, because in a democracy, it's very difficult to deal with such things. There are people to answer and things like that. Like you just were citing the Russia example. Russia is not, exactly a democracy. So, even if there is even in China, if there was a situation that they would have also reacted very similarly. Israel would have reacted very similarly. But India, the dynamics are a little different. We have this thing as, our people first, and then, all those, that kind of an approach we have. So in hindsight, if you look at it, a lot of people, can blame the government of the day for IC-814 and the kind of reactions that took place, etc., etc., etc. But then tell me, Akash, had the plane been stormed and then, we had lost about, say, 50 passengers, okay, out there, then there would have been a different kind of, kind of an uproar which would have taken place. So it was like a catch-22.
Right.
And finally, the government of the day decided that, come what may, we'll bring back everybody safe. We just lost one person in that, Rupin Katyal. That is one. We just lost one person. So a lot of things happen in the background. It's very easy to do a post analysis of the situation, all that. But the one thing was that I think the biggest blunder was to keep that man still alive there in a jail in Jammu Kashmir, despite knowing that the entire Pakistan establishment wants him back. And once he went back, General Pervez Musharraf did assure India that he will be kept under check. He will be under, he's not going to, spread his tentacles or anything. In less than 1 year, he starts the Jaish-e-Mohammed at a big public rally, which has the blessings of the Pakistan establishment. And then the first attack that the Jaish-e-Mohammed carried out was the parliament attack. One of the most horrific attacks, maybe not in terms of lives lost, but a symbol of democracy.
Yes, it was more of a symbiotic kind of an attack on India's democracy.
Yeah, and then after that, the number of attacks that Jaish-e-Mohammed has carried out. And one small point I would like to make here is he's so important to the establishment, Akash, who this guy Masood Azhar, that they are ready to coax China to block him from being termed, from being designated as a terrorist. It has happened now. Okay, now it has changed. Finally he has been designated by the UN. That's one thing. It's the same man who had plotted the assassination of Pervez Musharraf also. And after that, he had gone underground for some time, and then later he has been brought back into business. So, plotting the assassination of your general, and you're still there in business and still an asset, which only goes on to show how important a person is for the establishment as a whole in Pakistan.
Exactly, Vicky. And time and again, we have discussed these kind of matters in our previous, interactions also, that how India, tend to somehow miss the bus always. But hopefully, let's hope that it doesn't happen in the coming times, and we are much more steadfast in countering such kind of intelligence failures. But that's all we have today on the podcast. Vicky, thank you very much for joining me, and thank you to all of you for watching.
Yeah, Akash, before we end, just one small point I would like to make is that
please.
Coming back to this Netflix series, the thing is, yes, throughout the series, I watched the whole thing, and they only go by their aliases, and nowhere were the real names mentioned. The names are available on the website of the Ministry of External Affairs, as well as the alias names are also available. So I think as a producer director, you have to use that much amount of creativity to actually try and be a little more sensitive towards the public, and first give out a disclaimer that these are these people and they have used these names. That would have cleared the whole confusion.
I think they have done that now. The new disclaimer that Netflix is using, it basically now gives out the real name of the terrorists and the aliases that they used. But too late to be done, because I think the damage has been done. The political and the social fabric has been damaged a bit after the series come out. But yes, nonetheless, people are appreciating the series and all. And of course, series like this should be made that go and touch upon the kind of incidents that happen in India, especially when it comes to these kind of terror attacks that take place in India. And people should remember that what mistakes have been made in the past and should not learn from them, of course.
That's true. And the disclaimer is there only on Netflix India, by the way. It's not there across the world.
So I think that is another fight that needs to be fought in terms of targeting. To be very honest, it's just a targeting of one sect of culture. Well, that's all we have the time today on the podcast. Thank you once again, Vicky, for joining me, and thank you to all our viewers for joining.
Thanks, Akash. Thank you so much.